Hi there folks. Today I want to talk to you a bit about how to use a crop needle in birds. Look, I've been doing bird medicine for nearly 30 years, and in bird medicine, in dealing with birds, in breeding birds, the single most effective, easy, useful technique you can learn is how to use a crop needle safely in birds. So today, let's have a crack at it. Now, first thing we need to do is we need to have a bit of an understanding of the anatomy of a bird's crop. Really, the anatomy is pretty simple. Basically, once we're over the back of the tongue of the bird, we're into that green area on the diagram, which is the esophagus. You see the word esophagus there? We run down into the crop. Out the back of the crop runs another little opening, which then runs down into the stomach. But the trick is that there are a few structures in the neck of the bird that are pretty critical. One being the windpipe, and there's also some pretty big blood vessels. Now, lots of people freak out about trying to get that crop needle safely down into there. It really isn't very hard. And what I'm going to do today is show you how to do that safely, so you don't hurt the bird and you don't stress out. Like all things, there are horses for courses. When it comes to crop needling birds, we can go for the big Bertha, or we can go for a really fine little unit like this. Now, crop needles or medication tubes, same thing, come in sizes ranging from an 8 gauge, that's an 8 gauge, down to an 18 gauge. The big ones generally come in lengths of about 100 millimetres or 4 inches up to 150 millimetres. We actually make special ones for veterinarians as long as 200 millimetres when we're looking at taking samples out of the bottom of a crop of a macaw, for instance. However, the standard ones that you're interested in, about that long. That's about what you want. The little guys, actually I don't use a little one very often. Really, these little fine ones are restricted to finches, and there's not many people who crop needle finches very regularly. Little trick, first thing I'll say is always use the biggest crop needle that will fit. Now, the range of needles comes from an 8 gauge through a 10, a 12, 14, 16 and 18. Those sizes are an engineering measurement, and the smaller the number, the thicker the tube. An 8 gauge is a big one, an 18 gauge is a little fine one. You need to select the right one for the right bird. This chart gives you estimations of the sizes of the crop volume and the sizes of the needles that you should use for birds. Now look, it's not meant to be hard and fast, it's meant to give you a guide. You're going to find that some people will use bigger or smaller needles on these birds that are on the chart, but look, it's about giving you some idea where to start. So take a copy of that, make sure you read through it, think about the bird and the volume in the crop. And we'll talk about that again in a little while. The volume is important when you start putting fluids into a bird's crop. Just a little trick when you're crop needling birds. Lots of people forget about the dead space or the space inside the needle. So for instance, you've got a small volume that you want to give to a bird, let's say 0.2, 0.4 of a mil. You grab a 12 gauge needle and away you go. You fill up your syringe, you put the crop needle in, as we'll show you in a moment, and you start to give your medication. Just look what happens. This is an empty needle. I've got 1 mil of water in this syringe, and I start to press. Now I can press here, and we just watch the top of there. The water has only just now started to come out the top of the needle, and we've put in over 0.4 of a mil, just about 0.5 or half a mil. So the dead space between there and there is nearly half a mil. So if you were to use an empty crop needle attached to a syringe and give the bird 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 of a mil, you pressed it in, guess what? Didn't get any. Didn't get any. It's all in the needle. Be sure that your needle's filled to the end before you start measuring doses. Really critical, particularly when you're worming or you're giving antibiotics orally. Watch it. Now, trick to crop needling, and there is only one, and that's it, how you hold the bird. Most people got no idea. can't hold a bird. You've got to learn to do this. You cannot crop needle a bird unless you can hold it correctly. Now, number one rule, do not use gloves. Do I need to repeat that? Do not use gloves. You cannot feel the bird through a glove. If you're that scared about being bitten, give it away. Don't try it. You've got to learn to handle the bird without using gloves or holding him in gloves. You catch the bird using a towel or a piece of paper, something, but when you're handling the bird, it should be with your bare hands because that's where all your feel is. All right. It's okay. Bird sits in your hand. Your little finger, it holds the wings and just above that left foot. Your middle two fingers do nothing. Don't squeeze. Don't push down. They just sit there. The whole trick to this technique is to get the tip of your thumb up under the jaws, between the mandible. Okay? With that in place and your index finger around the back of the neck, this bird now can't move his head sideways. You've got complete control of his head. It's from that position that you can quite safely, gently extend the neck so you take away the S-bend. Birds' necks have an S-bend in it, which is why you can't use safely a curved crop needle. Me, don't like curved crop needles, won't use them. Not interested. Don't even talk to me about them. Not interested. Straight crop needles. With a little bit of gentle pressure with my thumb, I can actually straighten out the neck, which straightens out the esophagus. So now I've got a straight line from his mouth all the way down to the crop, and guess what? We've got a straight crop needle to go with it. But again, just to reiterate, tip of your thumb between the mandibles, index finger around the back of the neck, little finger traps the wing and just above that leg. Those two fingers do nothing. Do nothing. Bird sits there quite happily. Right? Now we're going to give him a crop needle. Think about what size crop needle we're going to use on this bird before we start.